The horizon's edge emerged from the unmarked zone 3 days after the rescue. She was damaged and tired, her hull scarred from battle and her crew exhausted from the long journey. But she was victorious. 55 Valori survivors traveled safely in her cargo hold, breathing clean air and drinking fresh water for the first time in weeks. News of their arrival spread quickly through the relay network. By the time the ship reached Relay Hub 17, half the galaxy was watching. Commander Laura Bennett stood at the docking port, waiting. When Captain Daniel Cruz walked down the ramp, she saluted him with respect in her eyes. "Captain," she said, "you made it." Daniel returned the salute. "We brought them home. All of them." Behind him, the Valori survivors emerged into the light of the station. They moved slowly, still weak from their ordeal, but there was hope in their faces. Salith walked with her daughter at her side, holding her hand tightly as if afraid to let go. The young female looked around at the station with wonder, seeing the galaxy with new eyes. Overseer Thalrix was waiting in his office. He did not look happy. When Daniel and Laura entered, he stood behind his desk with his arms crossed and his expression cold. "Captain Cruz," Thalrix said, "do you understand what you have done? You entered restricted space without authorization. You engaged in combat operations against a sovereign species. You violated at least a dozen Council regulations. The Galactic Council is demanding answers." Daniel met his gaze without flinching. The Council refused to help those people. "We did what was necessary." "Necessary?" Thalrix shook his head. "You have created a diplomatic incident. Several species are calling for sanctions against Earth. Some are demanding that humans be expelled from the galactic community entirely." Laura stepped forward. "With all respect, Overseer, the Valori are alive because of what Captain Cruz did. 55 innocent people are breathing today because humans refuse to abandon them. If that is a crime, then we accept the consequences." Thalrix stared at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his eyes, something that might have been doubt. But he said nothing more. He simply turned away and returned to his work. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council convened a special session to address the human actions in the unmarked zone. Representatives from dozens of species filled the great chamber, their voices raised in argument and accusation. The Corvin delegation pushed for punishment, insisting that Earth had violated sacred protocols. Other species joined them, calling humans reckless and dangerous. Then the Valori ambassador rose to speak. His name was Elder Valain, and he was old even by the standards of his long-lived species. He moved slowly to the speaking platform, his silver robes flowing behind him. The chamber fell silent as he prepared to give his testimony. "I have listened to the arguments made here today," Velen began. "I have heard the accusations against Earth. I have heard the calls for sanctions and punishment. And I must tell you that I am confused." He paused and looked around the chamber. "When the Quiet Dawn sent her distress signal, she called to all of you. Every species in this room received that signal. Every government represented here had the power to help. And what did you do?" Silence filled the chamber. No one answered. "You did nothing," Velen continued. "You cited regulations and protocols. You spoke of political complications and personal risk. You calculated the cost and decided that 55 lives were not worth the trouble. You turned away and let our people die." His voice grew stronger with each word. But the humans did not turn away. They heard the same signal you heard. They faced the same dangers you feared. And they came anyway. They crossed into the unmarked zone without authorization. They fought against raiders who outnumbered them. They risked their lives for strangers they had never met. Velen raised his hand and pointed toward the human delegation. "These Deathworlders, as you call them, did something that none of you were willing to do. They answered the call for help. They acted with compassion and courage. They brought our people home. He lowered his hand and spoke his final words with quiet power. If that is a violation of your protocols, then perhaps your protocols need to change. The Valori will not support sanctions against Earth. We will not condemn the species that saved us when everyone else refused. The vote came 2 hours later. The council divided sharply along unexpected lines. Species who had always been hostile to humans hesitated. Species who had dismissed them as primitive newcomers reconsidered their position. In the end, the vote against sanctions was narrow, but it was enough. Earth would not be punished. After the session ended, Lavra found Sylith waiting outside the chamber. The Valori scientist looked healthier now, her skin regaining its natural color and her eyes bright with intelligence. Her daughter stood beside her, watching the humans with quiet curiosity. "Commander Bennett," Sylith said, "I wanted to thank you. And your people." Lavra smiled gently. "You do not need to thank us. We only did what was right." "That is exactly why I must thank you," Sylith replied. "So many species talk about what is right. They write laws and make speeches and hold ceremonies. But when the moment comes, they do nothing. Your people are different. You act." She looked down at her daughter, then back at Lara. "My daughter asked me why the humans came for us. She wanted to understand. I told her that some beings are built for survival. They fight and struggle and never give up. And when they see others in danger, they cannot look away. It is in their nature." Lara nodded slowly. "We call it humanity. It is the best part of who we are." Sylith reached out and took Laura's hand. The touch was warm and gentle. "Perhaps someday the galaxy will learn from your example. Perhaps someday others will remember what it means to care for strangers." That evening, a galactic news broadcast discussed the events of the past weeks. Commentators analyzed the rescue mission and the council vote. They debated what it meant for human relations with the rest of the galaxy. Some predicted conflict. Others suggested that something had changed. One phrase appeared again and again in the coverage: the Deathworlder doctrine. It described a new approach to galactic politics, one based on action rather than words, courage rather than calculation, compassion rather than convenience. On the bridge of the horizon's edge, Captain Daniel Cruz watched the broadcast with his crew. They were quiet and tired, but there was satisfaction in their eyes. They had done something that mattered. They had made a difference. Kevin looked at the captain. "Do you think this will change anything? Really change anything?" Daniel considered the question. "I do not know. The galaxy is old and set in its ways. Change comes slowly, if it comes at all." He paused and looked out at the stars. "But today, 55 people are alive because we refuse to give up on them. Today, a little girl is safe because we went into the darkness and brought her home. Maybe that does not change the galaxy. Maybe it only changes the lives of those people. But that is enough." Kevin nodded. "That is enough." The horizon's edge turned toward Earth and began the long journey home. Behind her, the galaxy continued its ancient routines. Species argued and traded and fought as they always had. But something was different now. A new idea had taken root. When someone called for help, the Deathworlders answered, and maybe, just maybe, others would learn to do the same. The Scrathy outpost was built into the heart of a dead asteroid. It hung in space like a rotting tooth, surrounded by the wreckage of ships that had been captured and stripped for parts. 3 raider vessels patrolled the area in slow circles, their weapons ready and their sensors scanning the darkness for prey. Captain Daniel Cruz studied the outpost from a safe distance. His ship was hidden behind a cluster of smaller rocks, her engines cold and her lights dark. The crew waited in tense silence, watching the enemy movements on their screens. 3 ships, Marcus said quietly. Each one heavily armed. The outpost itself has at least a dozen weapon platforms. This is not going to be easy. Daniel nodded. Nothing worth doing ever is. Can we take them? Marcus considered the question carefully. The Horizon's Edge was built for combat. Those raiders were built for hunting unarmed prey. We hit hard enough, we can break them. Kevin had been monitoring the Scrathy communications since they arrived. Captain, I am picking up internal transmissions from the outpost. The hostages are being held in a detention block near the center of the structure. They are still alive. Then we have something to fight for, Daniel said. He stood and faced his crew. Here is the plan. We approach undercover, using the asteroid field to mask our signature. When we get close enough, we announce ourselves and offer to negotiate. If they refuse, we fight. If they attack, we fight. Either way, we are getting those people out. The Horizon's Edge moved through the asteroid field like a predator stalking its prey. The rocks provided cover from enemy sensors, but they also created hazards. Marcus worked the engines with precise control, avoiding collisions while maintaining their approach vector. The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut. When they were within communication range, Daniel opened a channel to the outpost. This is Captain Daniel Cruz of the human vessel, Horizon's Edge. I am here to negotiate the release of 8 Valori prisoners you are holding. I am prepared to offer trade goods in exchange for their safe return. The response came after a long pause. The voice that spoke was harsh and cruel, filled with amusement. A human ship? In our territory? You are either very brave or very stupid. My name is Warlord Vrek, the voice continued. I lead this clan, and I do not negotiate with prey. Daniel kept his voice calm. I am offering you a peaceful solution. Release the prisoners, and we will leave. There is no need for violence. Vrek laughed. It was an ugly sound, like bones breaking. No need for violence? Human, violence is all we know. It is all we respect. You have wandered into the hunting grounds, and now you will learn what happens to prey that forgets its place. The communication ended. A moment later, the 3 Scrathy ships broke from their patrol patterns and accelerated toward the Horizon's Edge, their weapons powered up with a hungry glow. Battle stations, Daniel commanded. All hands prepare for combat. The crew moved with practiced speed. Weapon systems came online. Shields activated. The Horizon's Edge transformed from a silent ghost into a machine of war. She had been built on Earth, in the shipyards of a species that had survived millions of years of predation. Every system was designed for one purpose: victory. The Scrathy attacked first. Their ships fired volleys of plasma bolts that streaked across the void like angry stars. The Horizon's Edge absorbed the hits on her forward shields and returned fire with devastating precision. Human weapons were different from Scrathy weapons. They were not flashy or elegant. They were brutal and efficient. The first Scrathy ship took a direct hit to its engine section. The explosion ripped through the vessel and sent it spinning into an asteroid. The second ship tried to flank the Horizon's Edge, but Marcus anticipated the maneuver and brought the ship around to meet it. Another volley of fire, another explosion, another enemy destroyed. The third ship broke off its attack and fled back toward the outpost. Daniel let it go. He had no interest in killing for the sake of killing. He only cared about the prisoners. Prepare the boarding team, Daniel ordered. Kevin, you lead them in. Find the hostages and get them out. We will provide cover from here. Kevin gathered his team in the airlock. 10 humans in combat armor, armed with weapons designed for close-quarters fighting. They boarded a shuttle and launched toward the outpost, flying through the debris field with reckless speed. The shuttle docked at an external port. The humans cut through the airlock and entered the outpost. Inside, The corridors were dim and narrow, built for the Scrathy's smaller frames. The humans had to crouch and move carefully, but their size and strength became advantages when they encountered resistance. Scrathy warriors attacked them at every turn. The raiders were fierce and fast, with claws and teeth designed for killing. But they had never fought humans before. They did not understand what they were facing. Humans evolved on a death world. Their home planet was a place of extreme temperatures, violent weather, dangerous predators, and constant struggle. Every human carried the legacy of that world in their bones. They were stronger than they looked. They were faster than they seemed. And when they fought to protect someone they cared about, they became something terrifying. Kevin led his team through the outpost with relentless determination. They pushed through barricades and overwhelmed defenders. They moved with a coordination that the Scrathy could not match. When they reached the detention block, they found 8 Valori prisoners huddled in cells, weak and frightened but alive. Among them was a young female with the same silver-blue skin as Salith. Her daughter. She looked up at Kevin with eyes full of tears. "We are here to take you home," Kevin said. The extraction was fast and violent. The humans formed a protective circle around the prisoners and fought their way back to the shuttle. Scrathy reinforcements tried to stop them, but nothing could slow them down. They were Deathworlders on a mission, and nothing in the galaxy could stand in their way. The shuttle launched from the outpost and raced back to the horizon's edge, behind them. The third Scrathy ship tried to pursue, but Daniel had positioned his vessel between the shuttle and the enemy. One final volley of fire crippled the raider and sent it drifting into the void. All hostages recovered. Kevin reported over the communication link. "We are coming home." Daniel allowed himself a small smile. "Well done. All hands, prepare for immediate departure. We are getting out of here." The horizon's edge turned away from the destroyed outpost and headed for the edge of the unmarked zone. Behind her, the Scrathy licked their wounds and tried to understand what had happened. They had thought themselves predators. They had thought humans were prey. They had been wrong. In the medical bay, Patricia treated the rescued prisoners while Salith held her daughter in her arms. The young Valori was crying, but they were tears of relief. Salith looked at the humans around her, these strange beings from a violent world who had risked everything to save strangers. She did not have words to express what she felt. Gratitude was too small. Admiration was not enough that the Deathworlders had come into the darkness. They had faced the monsters that lived there, and they had won. The quiet dawn floated in the shadow of a broken moon, her lights flickering weakly like the last breath of a dying animal. The ship was smaller than Daniel had expected. She was built for research, not for survival. Her hull was thin and delicate, designed for peaceful exploration of the cosmos. Now that hull was torn open in 3 places, and the darkness of space was leaking inside. The horizon's edge approached slowly, keeping her engines at minimum power. Marcus watched the sensor display with intense focus, checking for any sign of Scrathy patrol ships. So far, they had seen nothing. Either the raiders had moved on, or they were hiding somewhere nearby, waiting. "I have visual contact," Kevin reported. "The Quiet Dawn is in bad shape. Multiple hull breaches. No power signature from the main engine. Life support is running on emergency reserves." Daniel studied the damaged ship through the observation window. "Any communication from the survivors?" "Negative. Their transmitter is dead. They cannot hear us." Patricia stood beside the captain, her medical bag ready. "We need to get over there quickly. If their life support is failing, they could be suffering from oxygen deprivation. The juveniles will be affected first." Daniel nodded and made his decision. "Prepare a boarding team. Patricia, you lead the medical response. Kevin, I want you on the team as well. Your communication skills might help us coordinate the evacuation. Marcus, Keep the ship ready for immediate departure. The boarding party assembled in the airlock. They wore sealed suits with independent air supplies, designed for emergency operations in hostile environments. Patricia carried her medical equipment. Kevin brought portable communication devices. 6 other crew members joined them, carrying stretchers and emergency supplies. The shuttle crossed the gap between the 2 ships in minutes. They entered the quiet dawn through a damaged section of the hull, pulling themselves through the twisted metal with careful movements. The inside of the ship was cold and dark. Emergency lights cast weak red shadows on the walls. The air was thin and stale. Kevin activated his communication device and tried to broadcast a signal. "This is Lieutenant Kevin Shaw of the human vessel Horizon's Edge. We are here to help. Can anyone hear me?" Silence answered him. The team moved deeper into the ship, following the internal layout toward the main living quarters. They passed through laboratories filled with abandoned equipment. They walked by observation decks where telescopes pointed at nothing. The ship felt like a tomb dot. Then they found them. The survivors had gathered in a single compartment near the center of the ship. They had sealed the doors and redirected all remaining power to keep the air breathable in that one small space. 47 Valori huddled together in the dim light, their silver-blue skin pale and dry. They looked up with large, dark eyes as the humans entered. Patricia moved immediately to the nearest group. The Valori were weak and frightened, but alive. She checked their vital signs and administered hydration supplements. They are dehydrated and suffering from oxygen deprivation, but they will survive. We need to move them to the Horizon's Edge quickly. A female Valori stepped forward. She was older than the others, with faded markings on her skin that indicated age and wisdom. Her name was Salith. She was the lead scientist aboard the Quiet Dawn. "You came," she said. Her voice was soft and filled with disbelief. "We sent our signal to everyone. No one answered. We thought we were going to die here." Kevin knelt beside her. "We heard you. We came as fast as we could." Salith looked at the humans with wonder in her eyes. "We were told that no one would enter the unmarked zone. The Council refused. The other species refused. We prepared ourselves for death. Humans do not abandon people who ask for help," Kevin said. "It does not matter where you are. It does not matter what the cost. We answered the call." The evacuation began immediately. The humans worked quickly and efficiently, carrying the weakest Valori on stretchers and guiding the others toward the shuttle. Patricia stayed close to the juveniles, 12 young Valori who clung to their parents with terrified eyes. She spoke to them softly, using gentle words to calm their fear. As the last group prepared to leave, Salith grabbed Kevin's arm. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were desperate. "Wait," she said. "You cannot leave yet. There are others." Kevin stopped. "Others?" "The manifest shows 47 survivors. We have 47 here." "The Scrathi," Salith said. "They came before you. They attacked our ship and took some of our people. My daughter was among them. They took her to their outpost." Kevin felt his heart sink. He looked at Patricia, who had heard everything. They exchanged a glance that said more than words could express. "How many?" Kevin asked. 8, Salith replied, "including my daughter. She's only 12 cycles old. She is just a child." Kevin activated his communication link to the Horizon's Edge. "Captain, we have a problem. The Scrathi raided the ship before we arrived. They took 8 hostages to their outpost." There was a long pause. Then Daniel's voice came through the speaker, calm and steady. "Understood. Bring the survivors aboard. We will discuss our next move." Back on the Horizon's Edge, the rescued Valori were taken to the modified cargo hold. Patricia and her team provided medical care and made them comfortable. But the mood on the ship was tense. Everyone knew what had been discovered. Everyone knew what the captain was about to decide. Daniel gathered his senior officers in the briefing room. The faces around the table were serious and determined. The mission was to rescue the survivors from the Quiet Dawn, Daniel said. We have done that. We can leave now and return to civilized space. Our orders did not include a raid on a scratchy outpost. He paused and looked at each of them in turn. But there are 8 innocent people being held prisoner by those raiders. One of them is a child. I will not force any of you to continue. But I am asking, what do we do? Marcus was the first to speak. We did not come all this way to save most of them. We came to save all of them. Patricia nodded. I agree. Those people need us. How can we leave them behind? Kevin thought of Silith's face, the desperate hope in her eyes when she spoke of her daughter. I vote we go after them. Every single one. Daniel looked at his crew. They all nodded. There was no hesitation, no doubt. They had made their choice. Then we continue, Daniel said. Set a course for the Scrathy outpost. We are bringing everyone home. The horizon's edge changed direction and moved deeper into the darkness. Ahead of them, somewhere in the void, 8 prisoners waited. Behind them, the civilized galaxy continued to pretend that nothing was happening. But the Deathworlders were not finished yet. The distress signal arrived at Relay Hub 17 just after midnight station time. It came as a weak pulse of light on the communication board, barely strong enough to register. Lieutenant Kevin Shaw noticed it first. He leaned forward in his chair and adjusted the receiver, trying to clean up the signal. The message was fragmented and broken, but the meaning was clear. Someone out there was dying. Kevin turned to look at Commander Laura Bennett, who stood near the observation window with her arms crossed. She was watching the slow rotation of distant stars, thinking about home. Earth was very far from here. Sometimes she wondered if she would ever see it again. Commander, Kevin said, we have an SOS, automated distress beacon. The signal is coming from the unmarked zone. Lavra walked over to his station and looked at the screen. The coordinates placed the signal deep inside the most dangerous region of known space. The unmarked zone was a place where laws did not exist. Raiders and criminals made their homes there. No civilized species entered that space without expecting trouble. Can you identify the ship? Lavra asked. Kevin worked the controls for a moment. Yes, it is a Valori research vessel. The Quiet Dawn. Registry shows 47 souls on board. Scientists and their families, including 12 juveniles. Lavra felt her stomach tighten. The Valori were a peaceful species. They had no weapons, no military, no way to defend themselves. They were aquatic beings who spent their lives studying the stars and dreaming of discovery. The idea of them stranded in the unmarked zone was terrible. How long did they have? She asked. Based on the signal data, their engine is destroyed. Life support is failing. I estimate 72 hours. Maybe less. Lavra nodded and turned toward the central chamber of the station. She walked with purpose, her boots making sharp sounds against the metal floor. The other species on the station watched her pass. Some of them looked curious. Others looked away. Humans were still new to the galaxy. Many species did not know what to make of them. She found Overseer Thalrix in his office. He was a Corvan, tall and thin with gray skin and large dark eyes. The Corvans were administrators. They ran the relay stations and managed the communications network that connected the galaxy. Thalrix looked up from his work as Lavra entered. Commander Bennett, he said, what brings you here at this hour? We received a distress signal, Lavra said. A Valori ship is stranded in the unmarked zone. They need immediate rescue. Thalrix blinked slowly. His expression did not change. I see. That is unfortunate. Unfortunate? Lavra felt her voice rising. She forced herself to stay calm. Overseer, there are 47 people on that ship. Children. They will die without help. I understand the situation, Cowrick said. However, Council regulations are very clear. No rescue operations may be conducted in the unmarked zone without unanimous approval from the Galactic Council. The process requires a formal petition, a review period, and a vote. This typically takes between 4 and 6 weeks. Lavra stared at him. They have 72 hours. Then I am afraid the timeline is not favorable. Thalrix returned his attention to his work. I am sorry, Commander. My hands are tied. Lavra spent the next several hours trying to find another way. She spoke with representatives from the Melthery Collective, the Joran Empire, and the Silithi Federation. Each one gave her the same answer. The unmarked zone was too dangerous. The political complications were too great. The cost of a rescue mission could not be justified. One by one, they refused. She returned to the communications center, feeling exhausted and angry. Kevin was still at his station, monitoring the signal from the quiet dawn. It was growing weaker. Any luck? He asked. Lavra shook her head. Nobody will help. They all have their reasons, protocols, politics, fear. She sat down heavily in a chair beside him. I do not understand these people, Kevin. There are children dying out there. How can they just ignore that? Kevin was quiet for a moment. Maybe they have forgotten what it means to care about strangers, he said. Or maybe they never knew. Lavra thought about Earth. She thought about the history of her species. Humans had done terrible things to each other over the centuries. Wars, cruelty, suffering beyond measure. But they had also done beautiful things. They had pulled strangers from burning buildings. They had crossed oceans to help people they would never meet. They had given their lives for others without hesitation. That was the part of humanity that Lavra believed in. That was the part she carried with her into the stars. There has to be something we can do, she said. The hours passed slowly. The signal from the quiet dawn continued to fade. Lavra received updates from Kevin every 30 minutes. The Valori were sending messages now, desperate pleas for help broadcast on every frequency. No one answered. The galaxy remained silent. Overseer Thalrix called Lara to his office again. He informed her that several council members had expressed concern about human involvement in the matter. They worried that Earth might attempt an unauthorized rescue. Such an action would be a violation of galactic law. There would be consequences. I understand, Lavra said. Her voice was flat and cold. I hope you do, Thalrix replied. Humans are new to this community. You cannot afford to make enemies. Lavra left his office without another word. She walked back to the communication center and found Kevin waiting for her with a strange look on his face. What is it? She asked. Kevin handed her a datapad. Private message. Encrypted channel. It came directly from Earth Command. Lavra read the message. It was short, only 2 sentences. But those 2 sentences changed everything. We heard the signal too. Stand by. Lavra felt something shift inside her chest. It was hope. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to believe that the Valori might survive. What does it mean? Kevin asked. Lara looked at the observation window. Somewhere out there, beyond the comfortable safety of the relay station, a ship full of innocent people was waiting to die. And somewhere else, moving through the darkness of space, her people were coming. It means we are not like them, Lavra said. It means we remember what it feels like to need help. And it means that when someone calls out in the dark, humans answer. Kevin nodded slowly. He understood. They were both thinking the same thing. The galaxy had rules. The galaxy had protocols. But humans had something else. They had each other. And they had a stubborn, foolish, Wonderful refusal to abandon anyone who asked for help. The signal from the quiet dawn pulsed weakly on the screen. 47 lives hung in the balance. The Galactic Council had turned away. The other species had made their choice. Now it was time for the Deathworlders to make theirs. The Horizon's Edge was not a beautiful ship. She was built for war and survival, not for elegance. Her hull was thick and scarred from battles fought in distant corners of the galaxy. Her engines burned hot and loud. Everything about her spoke of violence and determination. Captain Daniel Cruz loved her like a soldier loves a trusted weapon. He stood on the bridge reading the orders that had just arrived from Earth Command. The message was clear and direct. A Valori research vessel was stranded in the unmarked zone. The Galactic Council had refused to authorize a rescue. Earth was sending help anyway. Daniel read the orders twice to make sure he understood. This mission would put his crew in danger. It would make enemies of powerful species. It might even start a war. But there were 47 innocent people waiting to die, and nobody else was coming. He called his senior officers to the briefing room. They arrived quickly, sensing the urgency in his voice. Chief Medical Officer Patricia Lane came first, her medical bag already hanging from her shoulder. Chief Engineer Marcus Cole followed close behind, wiping grease from his hands. Lieutenant Kevin Shaw had been transferred from Relay Hub 17 to join the mission. He took his seat at the table with a nervous expression on his young face. Daniel activated the holographic display. A map of the unmarked zone appeared in the center of the room, glowing with red warning markers. "Here is the situation," Daniel said. "A Valori ship called the Quiet Dawn is stranded here, near the remains of a shattered moon. They have less than 60 hours of life support remaining. The Galactic Council has refused to help. We are going anyway." Patricia studied the map with worried eyes. "The unmarked zone is Scrathy territory. Those raiders hunt anything that moves." "I know," Daniel said. "That is why we are going in quiet. No beacon, no broadcast, no engine signature. We slip in, grab the survivors, and slip out before anyone knows we were there." Marcus shook his head slowly. "Captain, that is a lot of empty space to cross without being detected. The Scrathy have sensor networks throughout the region. Then you will need to find a way around them," Daniel replied. "I am not asking if this mission is possible. I am telling you that we are doing it. 47 people are counting on us. I will not let them down." The room was silent for a moment. Then Patricia nodded. "I will prepare the medical bay for Valori physiology. They are aquatic, so they need high humidity and specific temperature ranges. I can modify one of the cargo holds to serve as an emergency habitat." Marcus rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "I can adjust the engine output to reduce our signature. If we move slowly and stay in the shadow of larger objects, we might avoid detection. It will not be perfect, but it gives us a chance." Kevin spoke up for the first time. "I can help with communications. I have been monitoring Scrathy frequencies since I arrived. I know their patrol patterns. We can use that information to plan our route." Daniel looked at each of them in turn. These were good people. Brave people. They knew the risks, and they were ready to face them anyway. He felt proud to serve with them. "Thank you," he said. "We launch in 2 hours. Get to work." The crew moved quickly. Patricia transformed the cargo hold into a water-rich environment suitable for Valori survivors. She studied their biology from the ship's database, learning about their respiratory systems, their nutritional needs, their sensitivity to certain wavelengths of light. She wanted to be ready for anything. Marcus crawled through the engine compartments with his tools, making adjustments that would hide the ship's presence from enemy sensors. He rerouted power systems and installed dampeners on the exhaust ports. The work was difficult and dangerous, but Marcus had been fixing things since he was a child. This was just another problem to solve. Kevin sat at the communication station, listening to scratchy transmissions and mapping their patrol routes. The raiders were active in the region, moving between outposts and hunting grounds. He found gaps in their coverage, places where the horizon's edge could pass unseen. It would require careful timing and a lot of luck, but it was possible. As the ship prepared to depart, a message arrived from Relay Hub 17. Commander Laura Bennett wished them good fortune and safe passage. She also warned them that Overseer Thaurix was furious. The Galactic Council had already begun discussing sanctions against Earth. Some species were calling the rescue mission an act of aggression. Daniel read the message and smiled grimly. Let them complain. Let them threaten. He did not care about politics or protocols. He cared about the people on that stranded ship, the scientists and children who were slowly running out of air. Everything else was noise. The horizon's edge departed on schedule. She moved away from civilized space and headed toward the darkness. The crew worked in shifts, maintaining silence and watching their instruments for any sign of detection. The stars grew fewer and farther between. The empty spaces between them seemed to stretch forever. On the third day, they reached the edge of the unmarked zone. Daniel stood on the bridge and looked out at the void ahead. There were no laws here. No protection. Only survival and death. All hands, he said over the intercom. We are entering hostile territory. From this moment forward, we run silent. No unnecessary communication. No unnecessary movement. We are ghosts. The ship crossed the border and disappeared into the shadows. Behind them, the civilized galaxy continued its business. Species argued in council chambers. Diplomats made speeches about regulations and proper procedures. Nobody came to help the Velari, but the Deathworlders were coming. Patricia checked her medical supplies one more time. Marcus monitored the engine readings with careful attention. Kevin tracked the scratchy patrols and plotted their course around them. Daniel stood at the center of it all, steady and calm, guiding his ship deeper into the dark. They had entered a place where death waited around every corner. They had volunteered for a mission that might cost them everything. They had done this for strangers they had never met, because that was what humans did. That was who they were. When the galaxy turned away and the powerful refused to act, the Deathworlders answered the call. They came not because it was safe or smart or profitable. They came because it was right that the quiet dawn was waiting. 47 lives hung in the balance, and the horizon's edge was coming to bring them home.